So I was working on my computer the other day, and I had to log into one of my accounts that I hadn't used for a while. And I had this pop-up that said it was time for me to confirm my identity. You know, the regular stuff: mother's maiden name, pet's first name, the street that I grew up on, and then, of course, like the two-step authentication that just sort of drives me crazy. But you know how this goes when you have to confirm that it is absolutely you behind the login. Now, this is exactly what's happening in Matthew chapter 3 when it comes to Jesus' baptism. It's confirming Jesus' identity. It's more than just two steps for confirming Jesus' identity. There are two things happening here. Number one, the text shows us that Jesus is superior to John the Baptist. It starts by talking about John the Baptist and John's work in that region, but it also makes very clear that John is the warm-up act, and Jesus, that is what we came for. It says this. It says that Jesus came from Galilee to the Jordan to be baptized by John. But John came to deter him. Jesus replied, "So let it be now. It is proper for us to do so in order to fulfill all righteousness." Again, Matthew is pointing back to the Hebrew scriptures, showing us that Jesus' life is connected to all of humanity of all time. At first, John refuses, and John says, no, Jesus, you should be the one to baptize me. And then Jesus is like, no, this is the way that it needs to be. This is how it was prophesied. This is how it needs to be. And the question, why? Why does it need to be? Well, the answer is for you and for me. But hold that thought just a second. The second thing that happens here in this chapter is to confirm that Jesus is God's beloved Son. Jesus goes into the water of the Jordan River, which represents the dark, watery chaos that we actually read in Genesis chapter 1 in the creation of the world. We always talk about how the Spirit is hovering over the waters, and the water is the dark, watery chaos. So when John takes Jesus into the river, Jesus chose to enter into this watery chaos, showing us that Jesus chose to enter into our mess, into our solidarity with all of humanity and in all of humanity's mess. In humanity's lostness of feeling like we're not enough, or we're not good, or we're unworthy, or we lack, or all of our own self-consciousness, all the ways we hurt each other, all of our brokenness, all of our trauma, all of our doubt, all the ways that we crucify ourselves. Jesus plunges into that dark chaos of the water, the dark chaos of humanity, the dark chaos of shame and depth, before coming back out. You see, we keep thinking to ourselves like we can get to God, but the whole time God's like, no, I'm coming to you. And as soon as Jesus was baptized and he went up out of the water, at that moment heaven was opened and the Spirit of God descended like a dove. The same Spirit that's hovering over the water since the beginning of time. The Spirit of God descended like a dove, alighting on Jesus, and a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, whom I love, with whom I am well pleased." Identity confirmation. Two-step authentication. Jesus is who Jesus says he is. And Jesus says who you are too in this passage. What Jesus was willing to do on your behalf started long before the beginning of time. Friends, you are God's child. You are God's beloved, with whom God is well pleased. Jesus confirming Jesus' identity and confirming yours too. So here's our questions for today. Number one, what words do you tend to identify with who you are? And number two, what does it mean for you when you hear that you're God's child, that you're God's beloved, and that God is well pleased with you? What kind of emotions does that evoke in you? Thanks for being here.